Hello, Giants fans, and welcome to a new edition of the Valentine's Views podcast here on YouTube. Your New York Giants have finished the first phase of 2025 training camp, the ramp-up period, or what teams refer to as the acclimation period. That means that the first 5 days of training camp, 4 practices, 5 days for the Giants, during which they're not allowed to wear pads. The most the Giants did was wear shells for a couple days, but things get real on Monday for the Giants when padded practices begin. Just so you know, before we get into reviewing some of what we've learned thus far, Big Blue View will be there. In fact, we'll be there in duplicate on Monday, as Nick Filato will join me to help break down everything that we see and learn during the Giants' first padded practice of 2025. That, of course, is a practice where a lot of the focus will be on offensive and defensive line play, because we haven't really seen fully padded practices with full contact along those front lines. And these kinds of practices are where the offensive and defensive linemen really are able to prepare for the upcoming season. All right, I wanted to hit a few topics today. First, an injury update. Unfortunately, wide receiver slash special teamer Bryce Ford Wheaton suffered what looks like a torn Achilles tendon on Sunday morning at practice. Bryce Ford Wheaton, player who has already missed an entire season due to an injury, was very impressive during the 2023 preseason training camp as an undrafted free agent out of West Virginia, guy who looked like he was going to make the roster as a special teamer, guy who was about 6'5", 220, 225, and had been very impressive in special teams work. Looked like he had a roster spot. Suffered a torn Achilles tendon and missed all of the 2023 season. Played last year, did a good job as a gunner, did a good job on special teams, played almost 80% of the special team snaps for the Giants in the games during which he was active. Did deal with a little bit of a shoulder issue last year that cost him a couple of games, but looks like Bryce Ford Wheaton's going to miss another season. He took to social media on Sunday after practice to more or less acknowledge the severity of the injury that he suffered on Sunday. So unfortunate break for Bryce Ford Wheaton. And, considering that his path, his role as special teams, you hope this isn't the case, but this might be the end of the NFL career of Bryce Ford Wheaton. A lot of these guys who are special teamers who don't really have a role on offense, defense, you suffer a couple of injuries like that, and you may not find another opportunity to make it in the NFL. It's just how the NFL goes. It's a bit of a meat grinder, and if you miss your window, you generally you don't get it back very often. Fingers crossed for Bryce Ford Wheaton that he gets another opportunity. But I'm reminded of a former Giant, former Cincinnati Bengal special teamer slash wide receiver, Cody Core, who was really good for the New York Giants. I'm not sure what year that was. It was 2019 or thereabouts with the Giants. Suffered an injury the following year and was never heard from again as an NFL player. It's just the NFL is a chew 'em up, spit 'em out kind of league, kind of proposition. Players know that. And, as I said, fingers crossed that Bryce Ford Wheaton gets healthy, gets another opportunity, whether that's with the Giants or somewhere else in 2026. All right, when we talk about training camp, when we talk about this time of the year, there's a lot of excitement, a lot of curiosity, a lot of eyeballs on the rookie class. And that is No exception for the Giants this year with 2 first-round picks, number 3 overall pick Abdul Carter, edge defender out of Penn State, and of course quarterback Jackson Dart, whom the Giants traded up for to select 25th in the draft out of Ole Miss. And on Sunday, now, full disclosure, I was not in attendance on Sunday, but on Sunday, all of the reports that you hear regarding Jackson Dart were that Dart, who had ups and downs throughout the spring and ups and downs throughout the first 3 days of training camp, Dart had his best, most decisive day. And he said after practice, and yes, it's a cliche, but he said after practice that things are beginning to slow down for him a little bit, which means he's beginning to understand things a little bit. And that's a good sign. You know, Dart is going to have ups and downs. He's going to have good days. He's going to have bad days. We've talked at Big Blue View about the idea that it's okay for him to make mistakes. And he even referenced that in talking to the media on Sunday. You know, he said he doesn't want to be a robot. He wants to be aggressive and he wants to at times take chances. And making mistakes now helps him learn what chances he can take, what chances he can't take, what plays can NFL defensive backs make that defensive backs he faced in college couldn't make. So it's a learning experience for Dart. Good to see him take a step forward. Found it really interesting that cornerback Nick Jones, who the Giants signed away from the Kansas City Chiefs, I think it was on a reserve futures contract. Jones is a former 7th-round pick in Kansas City, spent 2 years with the Chiefs, only played in a handful of games. But Dart was talking about how much Jones has been helping him. Now, Jones has been his nemesis on the field throughout the first few days of camp. He's got a couple of sacks of Dart. He's got an interception of Dart, had the pick 6 on the first day of camp, the very first 11-on-11 throw that Dart made. I think Jones had his hands on another ball on Sunday, but apparently Dart said they locker next to each other, and Jones has been helping him by explaining to him, you know, what Jones sees, you know, when he's gotten his hands on some of the plays that on some of the balls that Dart has thrown, and also some of the things that Jones learned, you know, from going up against Patrick Mahomes, you know, during practices for a couple of years in Kansas City. Just an interesting aside, because I get asked sometimes if players on opposite sides of the ball help each other. And this is an instance where the answer is definitely yes. And you love that. You love that because that's being a good teammate. That is helping your team, not just looking out for yourself. And you really have to love that from Nick Jones. And I don't know if Nick Jones is going to make this roster, but if Nick Jones can have some impact on Jackson Dart's development, even if that's just for a few weeks here in 2025 training camp, if he can have a positive impact on Dart and help him learn what it is to be an NFL quarterback, then bringing Nick Jones in, you know, and adding him to the 90-man roster turned out to be a good thing. As I said, I love examples of good teamwork and of guys being good teammates. And to me, that's what this is for, or from Nick Jones. Got to talk about Abdul Carter. Abdul Carter spoke to media on Sunday for the first time in training camp, and it came on the heels of a very impressive day for Carter, with Brian Burns only doing individual drills after Friday's really scary collision with Wan'Dale Robinson. And by the way, both guys are fine. Neither guy suffered any sort of major injury, avoided getting concussions. Both players worked in practice on Sunday in the individual portions of drills. So that's good. And what it allowed Burns, or not Burns, what it allowed Carter to do on Sunday was, for the first time, take almost all of his reps with the first team, which meant that he lined up against starting right tackle Jermaine Illuminor. And again, this is just in shells, which is the softer shoulder pads, but no actual full contact. But Carter was a handful for Illuminor. There were two clips making the round from practice, one of Carter bending the edge on a speed rush, getting underneath Illuminor and flushing Russell Wilson out of the pocket. On another occasion, and it might have even been the very next play, Carter with a ridiculous spin move, again flushing the quarterback out of the pocket and chasing him down as he moved left. Carter, a couple of days ago, was a handful for fifth-round pick Marcus Bowe. I think he beat Bowe on 3 successive pass rushes. I mean, this kid looks to be a game-wrecking, game-changing player, as advertised when the Giants were so excited to draft him back in April. When defensive line coach Andre Patterson talked about him a few weeks ago, Patterson mentioned the fact that Carter was only the second player that he had ever seen in more than 40 years of coaching, and probably 25 of those years, if not more, in the NFL. Only the second player he had seen who really, at this age, had the ability to read the offensive lineman the way that Carter does, had the ability to get to the top of the rush and know how to win, know based on the offensive lineman's set, based on how he's leaning, based on his footwork, based on all of those types of things that obviously these people know more about than I do. Carter knew which move to use. And as Carter said Sunday, he's got a lot of moves. And I found it interesting after listening to Patterson that Carter called pass rushing a science. It's not just something that you do where the ball is snapped and you plow ahead and you try to get to the quarterback any which way. There's a science to it. There is an ABC element to it. There is a use this move now so I can use that move later. And Carter, as a rookie in the NFL who hasn't even played a preseason game yet, understands all of those things that it takes a lot of pass rushers many, many years to learn. And it's an exciting thing for the New York Giants on defense. And it's also an exciting thing that the Giants have a young quarterback in Jackson Dart who, maybe he's the future, maybe he's not. But he gives them hope, he gives them optimism, he gives them a chance to have that long-term guy that they might be able to build around. And we'll see how all of that goes. Obviously, it's early, but I did want to go back and talk about padded practices on Monday. The Giants, as I said, will be in pads. They might also be in pads on Tuesday. That would make sense. There's an off day on Wednesday, and according to league rules as approved in the CBA, if I read them correctly, you're allowed to have padded practices. Once you get through the acclimation period, you're allowed to have them 3 days in a row. So the Giants won't be able to do that because there is an off day on Wednesday. But it would make sense if they were in pads both days. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what the line play looks like. We'll see what the run game looks like. But exciting. And if you happen to be one of the folks who has tickets to Monday or Tuesday and you'll be at Quest Diagnostics, good for you. And if you happen to recognize this old guy wearing his bucket hat, please say hello as I walk up and down the sidelines, trying to get you the best possible coverage that I can. Just a couple of quick hits before I sign off. Wanted to mention that Cam Scatterbo, the 4th-round pick, running back out of Arizona State, more and more impressive every single day. And we really haven't seen a lot of the run game yet because of the lack of pads, but he's made a couple of plays in the run game. But it's really hard to know with the run game because guys can't tackle, they can't thud, they can't hit, so you really don't know a lot of times as a running back bursts through the line of scrimmage whether he actually would have done that in normal conditions. But what I can say is Scatterbo comes as advertised when it comes to pass catching. You can see from a mile away that this young man has an opportunity to have a big role as a pass-catching running back for the Giants in 2025. Also wanted to mention that through the first few days, it looks like we wondered in the spring if there would be a real competition between Cordale Flott and Deonte Banks for a starting cornerback job. It looks like that is actually going to be the case. And it also looks like Evan Neal has an opportunity to unseat Greg Van Roten as the starting right guard. We obviously, again, I keep cautioning, we haven't seen any work in pads yet. We'll see how that goes beginning on Monday morning. But Neal is getting enough first-team reps. He's not getting as many as Van Roten, but he's getting enough to give you the idea that he has an opportunity if he can seize it. All right, Giants fans, that's enough. That's enough for today. As I said, I'll be out at Quest Diagnostics along with Nick Filato, and we should have a show for you on Monday night, wrapping up what we see from what will be the 5th day of practice for your Giants in training camp. So please remember to like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. And as always, please stay safe out there, take care of each other, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.